What's up, fellow podcaster? In today's podcast interview breakdown, I'll be reacting to Tom DeLonge on Steve-O's Wild Ride podcast. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom DeLonge.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hello.
dude. This is my co-host, Scott Randolph.
So keep in mind right off the bat, these podcast interview breakdowns are for educational purposes only. When it comes to intros, when you're introing a guest, I like to make it a little bit fun to kind of break the ice, like maybe name a couple, like two things that they're known for, and then something like they did recently for the third thing you mentioned, just to kind of break the ice. But I think these guys are friends. But in your show, you'll definitely want to consider that for sure.
What's up, Scott?
Greetings.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man. We've just worked our way into your day of recording.
Yeah. Yep. I fucking walk outside and there's like a van. No, actually, what really happened? Let me actually tell you the real story. I walked into the kitchen and the dog is sitting there, like perfect, like a fucking canine from the FBI. And I found out that one of the Groms gave him some bacon.
Yeah.
So I get it. And I come out and here's the van. You got air conditioning. You let me choose the color. I'm like, this is like the easiest interview ever. You got an awesome dog and it's cool in here. And, you know, you guys just quality people, you know?
Well,
I am super curious on how they even, or whose idea it was to have Tom on the podcast. It just I think they grew up in the same era, but I'm always curious to how they actually crossed paths and wanted him on the podcast. And it's so funny because even before Steve-O had his podcast, I always thought it would be cool to be able to build out a van just like this and go basically on tour to interview people like this. And it's like your studio just rolls with you. Tom said he was recording that day. It's like, hey man, I'll pull up and boom, we'll knock this out. Super jealous, would love to do this someday.
thanks, man. I appreciate it. So what is it that you're recording?
I'm recording guitars and I'm doing working on a live album for Angels and Airwaves right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good shit, man. So we're about the same age, dude. I was born in 74.
But you're so much more mature than me. You know, that extra year you got on me is like super, like just life experience, you know?
I mean, who knows, man? It's good stuff.
And anybody watching this, it's super nostalgia because I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s with both of these guys. Jackass was huge and like still a huge fan, big nostalgia there. And then Blink-182 has always been one of my favorite bands. So it's just really cool to see these guys together. And it's funny, if you notice, between myself, Steve-O, and Tom, we've all got a little bit of salt and pepper. So we've all aged a little bit, but this is just super cool to see these two together.
An experience. You know, I was on Cameo for, I was on Cameo for a minute there. And I had like the one request that came from like a legit thing was Blink-182.
Yeah. What request? In what way?
What they requested for you to do a cameo for them?
To promote some, I forget if it was a music project. You know.
That's rad. That's rad. Like record labels are going to Cameo. We need to get some like fucking some quality people to talk about that.
Yeah, like restaurants are getting Snoop to like promote for their business. You know, it's like
Snoop's like it's usually $50K, but on Cameo it's like $1,500.
Yeah.
Like, it's a workaround.
I know, it's weird.
And I was so happy to do it. And I recorded this video saying that in year 2000, before Jackass came out, and while I was working as a circus clown in a flea market,
Everyone starts out things this way.
I was at a Blink-182 concert in Miami. I believe it was American Airlines Arena. And I started out at the top of the arena and walked down all the stairs, just in one of the aisles, like on my hands in a handstand.
That's funny.
That one, I was just really, really proud of that. I also once got kicked out of a Kiss concert for breathing fire in the audience.
Because they don't like fire. Yes, they've never used it. They don't like it.
Well, the band wasn't mad at it. Well, actually, maybe the band was mad because I blew a bigger fireball than Gene Simmons.
That's what I'm saying. It's really about egos here. Yeah, that's funny.
I'm surprised you guys never crossed paths in the early 2000s.
We did. I met you, Bam, and some of the other dudes. A few places. It was always like in a crowd backstage or at like a snowboard event or skate event or some shit. But we did. But it's not like we ever hung. But the thing that's funny is like growing up a skateboarder, that was like my life, right? And my friends were Blink came out of a group of skateboarders.
It's so crazy because there's a couple things to unpack there. I I'm just once again just a little jealous that they get to do this interview. I mean, both of these guys are on my interview list, but since they're friends and they're at a certain level celebrity wise, like they're going to just be so much more comfortable, so much laid back. You could just tell by his body language. He's cursing a little bit. By the way, if you are a podcaster, I always recommend to my clients and my students that you do not curse, just because I always follow what Howard Stern once said. He's like, when he went from radio to Sirius, people are like, oh my gosh, you could swear now. And he's like, I don't want to swear because it takes away from the interview. Now, that's just as a host. These two guys are just having fun, chilling out. But I also want to know what it's like when they come across each other at these events, since they're at the same level. Because if you and I were at an event and either one of them passed by, we'd be like, oh man, that's Tom DeLonge. And he would just pass by. Or, oh man, that's Steve-O. He would pass by. But these two, are they just like, oh my God, that's Tom DeLonge from Blink-182? And he's like, oh my gosh, that's Steve-O from Jackass. I mean, and then it's like, what do you guys say to each other? Do you guys have beers together? Do you guys go out and skate? I totally forgot that Tom and all that used to skate too. So do you guys do skateboarding tricks together? It's like, hey, I could show you a kickflip on, you can do a wall grind. I don't know, but I would love to be there for that conversation.
I was exactly like you and all your buds. Like, so it's funny when I met them or we cross paths or whatever, it's really the same culture. It's different than skateboarding now in many ways, where, now you got a helmet and a skate park. It's like, we'd fucking jump people's fences when their pool wasn't full yet. That's the only pool you got, until they catch you. So, so the culture back there was super unifying, and like the Warped Tour and all that shit. So like, whenever we would hang with anybody affiliated with you and your friend groups and all the Jackass shit, like it was very like, oh yeah, these are like my neighbors, these are dudes I skate with every day. And I try to explain that to people about growing up in skateboarding that way. Like, that's where Blink came from. Except we were also kind of involved in surf too. I wasn't into surfing, but Taylor Steele and all that shit, they had a really strong culture too. But they're like the Colgate Smile, like good looking surfers and shit. Like skateboarders were all fucking dirty and slamming on the concrete. It's a little bit different,
Yeah. When like early 2000s, when we would have met, like how loaded would you have been?
On drugs or what? Or money?
No. Yeah, I mean, like
how rich were you?
I didn't know.
That's such a great answer.
Those good questions.
But I don't know. Well, back then, like, I was always a stoner. I had a lot of fun.
So that is a good question from Steve-O, and since they are at the same celebrity status, he can ask things like that. But when you ask a question like that, you want to be as specific as possible. Like even Tom said, he didn't know, it's like, was I loaded on drugs or were you loaded? Like, Blink-182 is huge. So it would be interesting if they're going to go into the financial part, which I doubt they will, but we'll see. And same with Steve-O. Tom could turn it back on him and be like, how are you doing? And it's like, same with the drug situation. It's like, well, where were you guys? Where he's about to talk about that he was a stoner. So it's like, did they ever smoke together? If I were the co-host of Steve-O show, that is a question I would ask, if they would ever smoke together back then, or maybe even now. I don't know if that's their thing.
Fun with pills, narcotics for a long time, and that almost fucking killed me. So I think I got out of that. Alcohol was, I used to tell people I don't drink because I don't like alcohol. Well, I drink when I play shows. Well, I play shows 10 months out of the year. I was like, fuck, I'm like, you walk around with, like, oh, I don't drink that much. But I'm like, fuck, I've had my time, and I'm just thankful that I got out of it decently clean, but yeah, it's hard. Like, it's fucking hard to be young, traveling around with a job where you don't really have a boss,
right?
And you're kind of like rewarded for being a shithead,
and you work 1 hour a day,
and you could choose if you even want to do that,
right?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like, I went through the airport with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, I got weed on me." And I'm like, "You have weed on you through the airport?" He's like, "Yeah, you can't do that." And it's like, you guys grew up in the generation where you were touring, where you couldn't even like smuggle weed through the airports.
One time, because we would get these fucking like private like shuttles at airports, so kids wouldn't bother us.
Yeah.
And so I remember this one time I had a bunch of weed in my suitcase, and because whatever, I could see them checking my pockets and my carry-on, but the shuttle group with just our band took us into a private office and said, okay, they're going to bring security and just check your luggage here. I was like, okay, well, I'm wondering if they're going to go in my suitcase. I thought I would just run through an x-ray, not a big deal. Well, there's two dudes, and while one guy's looking at one guy's looking at the other, I just kind of open mine up and I just fucking, I shuffle something, and then the guy gets up and leaves. The other person goes, hey. And I go, what? He goes, he went to go get more security because he saw all this fucking pot in my bag. And I was like, shit. So I just grabbed it and I ran out of that room and I took off down the terminal to a bathroom and like fucking threw it all away. I come back and there's three of the big fucking security authority dudes in there, and they don't find anything. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, they obviously didn't find anything. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm cool. And then I get in the car, they lock everything up, and I get in the car. Now they're driving us on the tarmac to the airplane just to skip the gate and everything. And I'm like, okay, we're cool. And then right before we get to the plane, a cop car goes right behind us on the tarmac. And I was like, fuck, I hope they're not here for me. Like, I don't know what they're here for, But then all of a sudden, like, we get on the plane and that cop car just parks and they come on, and then they're on the plane looking. And I'm like, fuck, I hope they're not here for me still, And that's all cool. And that didn't happen. So then we're flying. And then right when we land, my security guard goes, he goes, you just go straight to the van, don't get your luggage, And so I did that. And turns out they put these stickers I didn't even know existed on my luggage. It says the letters DE, which means drug enforcement. So they just, if they think there's something there, they stick it and they call ahead. And so if you see cops at a baggage claim waiting around, they might be looking for that sticker. They'll grab that luggage. And that happened. So my bag came out with drug enforcement stickers on it. And my security guard, my bodyguard dude, just ripped the stickers off and took it because he knew what to look for. So it's kind of fucking.
What a great story that was.
Yeah. Well, it's just like,
I
was
but what's stupid about it? It's fucking pot. It's like, dude,
I was just about to say, like, I mean, I can't even remember what Steve-O said, but it wasn't even that good of a lead up into that story. Like, or no, he asked if he was loaded. Man, what a story. And I wonder if he is still, does he still have that bodyguard? Does he, like, now I wonder, does he still look for those stickers on the bag now that he knows what to look for? And do you think they're still doing it to this day? But man, what a great story.
Dude, this isn't like, I mean, dude, this is like literally the one thing that doesn't kill you and doesn't addict you and doesn't really fuck you up other than you eat a little bit and say some dick jokes. But like, it's so retarded, like the whole thing around weed. And
yeah, did you have any cool places where you used to try to smuggle drugs in different states or countries?
Usually my butt. I was never pulling that shit like international. Like last thing you want to do is go to jail in fucking Peru or something. Not that we ever toured Peru, but you found a dog in Peru, which was awesome. But so I never did that. You just try and find things there, but I wasn't that gnarly about it like back then. Like now I kind of go, if I go on tour, how do I get weed? It's so boring. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do, But back then I was like, I just wasn't that crazy about it. Or I had prescription pills was like my thing because I broke my back. Like I had like multiple herniated discs and they broke in pieces, tangled in my sciatic. I was like on a cane for like a year.
How'd you break your back?
Well, just long time playing guitar, hunched over, and launch ramps. Remember launch ramps are so big when we were younger?
Yeah.
What the fuck were we thinking? Up and then slam up like 8 feet, bam, over and over again. And then we're like, maybe that wasn't the smartest way to do it. But
did you ever like ollie off the launch ramp, or was it you an early grabber?
I was an early grabber because I just never had the chops to do
me either.
Transitions. Like, oh, you made me feel better. Okay, good.
Yeah, me either. I had a little phase of ollieing off them, and it was very brief.
Remember Nodis?
Oh my God.
Nodis.
It breaks my heart that he doesn't follow me back on Instagram. I have a Nodis board that I made into a like where the wheel, or my girl made it for me. The wheels are light bulbs. It's on the wall, so it's a lamp.
That's sick.
It's got trucks and the wheels are like.
So once again, I do these for educational purposes. I have no idea what they're talking about. I'm assuming it's a skate deck or whatever it's called. So it's one of those things where it's like provide context to your viewers. Not all of your viewers or listeners are skateboarders. So some people don't know what dropping into a ramp is, or, whatever the hell they're talking about with light up wheels and stuff. So if you have a podcast interview, just make sure, just remember that a lot of your viewers don't know what you're talking about. You need to provide context. Be like, just ask him, like, for people who don't know what XYZ is, could you describe it? But yeah.
There was like a whole time frame in skateboarding was like, not a cop, it's not a cop. It was the raddest name.
He's the raddest.
And also, you broke your back. How did it feel when people think you broke your back, I think of you're paralyzed, you're in a wheelchair, there was like a Bruce Lee movie where he was like suspended in this thing and he couldn't move. Was it like that? What was the most painful part? Did you almost get addicted to opiates? Did you, since you did smoke, did you use marijuana to help with the pain? How does that heal? Or do you still have a long-term pain? What was the most painful part? What was the not most painful part? Were there any benefits that came with it? I mean, there's a million questions to kind of go off of you breaking your back and you being hunched over. Are they going to be making, is there anything you can wear now for guitars? Cause like if you have bad posture, you could wear those things where it like straps you in or straps you up to make sure your shoulders are back. What are you, do you still have pain to this day? And how long did it take to recover? And that's just off the top of my head. There's a million ways you could go with that.
He's just the raddest guy there ever was. I mean,
Dude, he would do shit, but he would ollie off these launch ramps and embankments, and he's like 18 feet in the air, and you're like, whoa.
right. When he board slid the crossbar of the Jeep.
Oh, dude, you know who else is rad like him is Jeremy Klein. Jeremy's a friend of mine, and I haven't talked to him in years, but I used to skate with him all the time. And Jeremy was like that, like, well, here's like a beautiful ledge to skate, and he's like, but look at that little bump over there with weeds on it and a rock and like trash. And he goes to that. One time I slammed so hard that I thought I was dying, right? And he comes right past me, and I'm in the worst pain still. I haven't like come out of it yet. I'm like literally think I'm dying. And all he says is, that's what you get for ollieing, because he spent the whole day doing slappies. Just fucking slappies. And because I ollied and ate shit, like
so rad, man. Like he was in the Rubbish Heap video, which
I remember that. I don't remember the video, but I remember that name.
The Rubbish Heap video was Spike Jonze's first ever video project.
Spike Jonze.
There was a video for World Industries. Jeremy Klein was in it. Jeremy Klein was in the end and everything. I love that we have the skateboarding in common.
Yeah.
Did you ever do like an early grab 360 off a launch ramp?
Fuck no, dude. I'm like straight up Melancholy's methods and shit. Maybe try a judo back in the day. You know, like I remember the day I was skating this place, and like this dude shows up with pitch black hair, punk rock dickies and shit, and he's doing 360 fucking varial flips or something to disaster slides, and it was Hensley.
Wow.
And I was like floored, because this is that at that moment he is the guy for street.
Sure,
you know, he was, yeah. And I remember like going, I don't know if my fucking judo is good enough, you know, but I couldn't flip the board. I mean, now these Groms are like fucking 360 flip. They stand in a parking lot and do it for months until they can do it. And I was like, I can't do that. Like,
it's so insane. I don't know how a kid could be introduced to skateboarding for the first time, see what the pros are doing, and be like, oh, dude, I'm going to get into this.
It's so gnarly. I mean, it's so gnarly that people are like.
So once again, context matters, because once again, I have no clue what they're talking about as far as like what kind of move. I know what an ollie is, but it's funny, you know what he just said about kids nowadays seeing the pros. You know, as a kid, watching the X Games back in the early 2000s, thinking it was super cool and super easy. I myself got on a skateboard one time, went down a hill, and I panicked, and instead of jumping off into like the grass, I jumped off and ran with it, stepped on the board and like split, and I basically tore my ankle open. So that would be, I would tell him that story, and then I would ask him, be like, what was it like when you first got on the board? Was it easy or was it hard? I know a lot of these guys surf too. So does it go hand in hand? And it's just like, what was your first injury, or what was your first stupid thing that you did where it's like, okay, yeah, that's it. That sounds like a good idea. And then it's like, oh, that'll be easy. And then boom. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a million ways you could go with that as well.
Like, well, kickflip is just like the beginning of what I'm doing in the air.
Right.
It's just like the first of 3 things I'm doing. It's just, but the flipping stuff was just taking off when I was skateboarding, because I really stopped skating when I got out of high school and I started touring. And I was like, I can't break my wrists.
Did you graduate high school 93?
93. Yeah. So I had to like, I just couldn't do crazy shit. I was always like going on tour. So
that's crazy that Blink was formed when you were still in high school.
16. Yeah. That's why the dick jokes were so great, you know, like, because we were just right in the middle of when they should have been. Great.
And so now you've got, are you more in?
That's the second time he has mentioned dick jokes. So I'd be like, okay, give me the top. What is your top dick joke or top 3 dick jokes? And it's like, are they still funny to this day? And who's got the best ones out of Mark or Travis or you? If you had to rank you 3 the original Blink members for dick jokes, who's got the best and who's got the worst?
And like the TV film stuff than music?
Kind of both. But yeah, I'm pretty heavily into the film stuff. I put out a movie called Monsters of California. I made a movie called Monsters of California. We launched a teaser trailer for it a few weeks ago. Hoping that'll come out this year. But that's like this rad indie story about three skateboarders, but our kind, like just actual like fucking dirty dudes. And it was funny, which was funny because every time I was talking to people in Hollywood about this, like or when I was getting it developed and setting it up, I was always just like, okay, when I say skateboarding, I was like, it's not what you think, because I know what you're thinking. You see kids with helmets running around all perfect, like a skate park. I go, it's like, and I would always go back. I was like, Steve-O and Bam and the guy. I mean, that's my friends. Okay. That's who I grew up with. Just picture those guys as my best friends. That's who's in this movie, and you can cast skateboarders and stuff. But for me, we did I found three dudes that are like 17, 18 years old, what they play. And, but they're just edgy, just boys, and it's cool because I until mid 90s, when Jonah Hill did mid 90s, I was like, I've never seen anything where they captured skateboarding in the way I knew it.
Right.
And that really reminded me of like the hot summer days, like getting into trouble and everyone's really rough around the edges, So Monsters of California is these three skateboarders get all fucked up, mixed in with all this paranormal stuff, government stuff, and those UFO stuff. And then that kind of was the beginning of setting up like a whole bunch of other films that I'm doing. And these are big science fiction things.
Yeah, I saw it was it like a Deadline article about like you've got like a series based on your book about UFOs, and then now there's like a subsequent series to.
Before we get into like the whole deep dive of this UFO, of him and UFOs and things like that, he did. I would want to know where his passion for film comes from and where it started, because he did a project with Angels and Airwaves with a famous YouTuber, Peter McKinnon. And I'm not sure if they released it. They released a bunch of teasers and there's a bunch of photos. So before we got into, I don't think that's the same documentary, but I would be curious to know how Tom came across Peter McKinnon, or did Peter McKinnon reach out to him for an Angels and Airwaves thing? Or it's like, what? Because if Tom saw him, it's like, does Tom reach out via DM? Did he send him an email? Does he send his assistant after Peter McKinnon? Or like what drew, I mean, Peter McKinnon's style is just, I know why, but I'm just curious what piece of content that he saw that really like sealed the deal. Cause I'm sure there was like a handful of his work that's just awesome. And then it would be cool to know which piece were you like, damn, I think this kid is really onto something. And do they still have a really good relationship? And how did that film do? And are they going to work together in the future?
So Legendary picked up my books called Secret Machines. It's like these 700-page novels that are about UFOs, story about UFOs, but it's all government. It's all like military industrial complex. Think like Area 51, CIA, Department of Defense, and then their.
So when you start, if anybody knows me, and if this is your first time seeing me, I was in broadcasting for 10 years, and one of my passions was, or is still, I'm an alien enthusiast. I actually almost joined a alien investigation team called MUFON out in California, but they wanted me to pay them $300 to get some certification, and I already had almost 10 years of broadcast experience. So no. But where did the fascinations from UFOs come from? You talk to all these government officials, you have your own, I think I can't remember the brand name. It's like the Stars and Arts or something, the School of Stars and Arts. I can't remember what it's called. I actually have a hat over there. I wish I could read it, but this light is blinding me. But it's like, are you worried to go down the rabbit hole? Because I feel like when you start digging like this, you're eventually, because you're talking to government officials, it's like, well, how do you get that access? Do you get special access because of who you are? Or it's like, if I tried to reach out, and it's like, even though I have all these years of experience, are they going to talk to me? How did they get to talk to you? Do they divulge classified information? Is there something that you were told that really like knocked your socks off? Have you seen UFOs? Have you been to Area 51? I've been to Area 51. I've been to the gate. They tell you to leave in a black Suburban, and it's a town called Rachel, Nevada. It's actually kind of creepy out there. It's very Hills Have Eyes-esque. But These are all questions I would ask. I have so many alien questions for this dude.
Counterparts in other countries, and then intermixed with that is some of the things flying around are totally different entirely, you know. And so it's a big deal because this is the true story of UFOs, of what's been going on with our government and everything else. So
I think that there's two things that really strike me as crazy about the developments with UFOs. Number one, it's crazy that the government is all of a sudden just sort of saying, yeah, the UFOs are real. You know, there's like, you know, all this, like the government acknowledging.
you know, we did that. I did that.
Wow.
That's why they're doing that.
But what's even,
I don't say that. I sound like a dick when I say that, but I'm like, that's why. I have, there's a whole story here, but keep going.
It's crazy to me that the
So you got to be careful. Now, he just said that there is a story there. Steve-O better ask about that story when he's done with whatever he's about to say.
government's acknowledging UFOs are very real. And it's even crazier that news comes out. And like, everyone's like, oh.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, but interest rates are gnarly. And like fucking COVID, you're like, what the fuck? Like, that's how a lot of us feel. What happened is that book, Secret Machines, I wrote that with an author, and I started my company, To the Stars, and we're going to publish a book. And then when I put it in there, because I studied UFOs for like 20 years, and I was like, I figured out what's going on. Not just like the bullshit you read or thing. Like, I figured out what's going on. And I was like, shit, if I put this out there and open my big mouth, I might get in a lot of trouble. So I should probably go ask for some permission. So I spent like a long time working my way in. And then I got into a group of people, and they brought me in, and I was given all the permission. So then I come out with a book, and I go on national radio and all this shit. Well, apparently that group didn't really talk to another group of some other 3-letter places, and those other places got really fucking pissed because here's this fucking rock star kid like telling the biggest national security secrets that we got, period. And so they came and they were like, we need to know who the fuck you are and who the fuck you're talking to, and all this crazy Ed Snowden type shit.
Wow.
And I was like, hold on. And I had to explain that like all this really classified crazy shit. I figured that out on my own. I don't have anyone passing me like,
yeah, dude, I'm sorry, man. I was tripping balls.
I know. Dude, I'm all sorry. I was stoned one night, and I just kind of fucking did a puzzle, and I was like, whoa, you know? So what happened then was, Hillary Clinton was running for presidency against, I guess it was against Trump, and John Podesta was her campaign manager.
Okay.
At the time, he was also senior advisor to Obama. So I was holding conversations with Podesta to get to Obama, and I had 2 multi-star generals from Space Command and the head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, that Skunk Works built Area 51, their elite engineering division. I had them all on this like fucking emails, and we're setting up these conference calls and stuff. Well, Hillary Clinton's campaign got hacked by the Russians, WikiLeaks, and it outed all the shit about Podesta and her. And what happened with that was when all these news journalists were pouring through WikiLeaks to see what spilled from Hillary's campaign, they found these fucking emails with me and Podesta talking to these generals about UFOs. So Wall Street Journal threw that onto the Wall Street Journal. And then I was like, fuck, I'm fucked. And I'm like out there like fucking erasing computers and doing all this different, I didn't know what to do. And at that time, all these other government people that came out.
Let me ask you, why would that be a problem for you? If, I mean, there's nothing wrong with exchanging emails with.
That wasn't the issue. The more of the issue was like, the more of the issue.
Clearance security.
Just all these guys are holding the secrets of the universe. And it's what would happen in conversations is I just knew things. So I would say it. They might not say something back, but I'm kind of thinking that any of those conversations should not be fucking poured over by anybody.
Okay.
So what exactly were you saying? And it's like, how, if information is classified, how do you know that you were stumbling upon classified information? And, when these 3-letter agencies show up, do you call your lawyer, or how do you react to that? And he's in such a good story, like he was going down, and Steve-O just kind of stopped him. So if somebody's on a roll like that, just let them talk. That when I do podcast interviews, I tell all my students and clients that it's not about you, it's about them. I think, once again, I'm not shitting on Steve-O for anything he's saying. I'm just saying I would have, like, he's telling like a really in-depth story about almost getting busted by these 3-letter agencies and getting caught up in the crossfire of this thing. And he just kind of interrupted the story a little bit. But it would be really interesting to know. Also, yeah, as far as, I want to know if, Yeah, were you okay, so you were scared of people of those three-letter agencies. Were you worried that they were going to hack into your computers? Were they gonna show up looking for hard drives? Were you worried that you were gonna get arrested, or were you worried that they were gonna come and black bag you? Or, I mean, canceled is one thing, but it's like, well, are they gonna make you disappear?
Wants to just come in and just like make a name for themselves at the bureau, you know?
All right.
So I'm just like tripping, like, fuck this. And then
I can see that.
yeah. So what happened though is it gave me all this credibility, because then all of a sudden all these other people in the government knew that I was like hanging around with some big boys. So they all came out and said, there's a better way to do what you're doing. And then that's when my company was not just me, it became something bigger. And so the company came out to the public, founded by myself, one of the heads of the CIA, and the head physicist for the UFO program. And then I hired the program director, the guy that ran the UFO program. And then I brought on another like 8 people from the DOD and the CIA. So they're all part of my company. And the first thing we did was take those videos to the New York Times and out the program. And then we went and spent 2 years briefing all the committees in the Senate and Congress and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So now you're seeing hearings. The DOD admitted UFOs are real. The Navy admitted, that's all us. The hearings at Congress and the UAP task force, that's all that. We started all of that. And it all started with me just being a little punk rock kid, just going, I'm going to fucking do this. Not really knowing what I was playing with, you know?
So I mean, it's super impressive. And I love how well you communicate too. Your ability to tell stories is really.
Well, thank you.
He's a highly evolved being.
I'm just a very spiritual dude, man.
Dude, I love it. Can you?
I would ask if he was an alien. Do people ever ask if you are an alien? And I'm just also, he mentioned hiring all these people. It's like, hire them to do what? And I got to know how much you pay these people, because it's like, what exactly are they doing all day? Are they just keep digging for information, for classified information? Are they just there to do more research on these projects, make sure it gets out to the public? Like, what exactly, like, who did you hire? Why did you hire? And what is their job description? And if you can, how much are these people getting paid? And do you, if I would do a little bit more research on his company, but it's like, do you need anybody to do any type of investigation work, or just asking questions for people who like are abducted? Like, there's so many documentaries out there of people who claim to be abducted. I would love to sit down with those people and just really hear their story, and maybe even ask Tom, has he talked to anybody who's been abducted, or these people in these high military 3-letter agency? It's like, have they seen anything? Like, is there how many questions could you ask before they're like, that's classified, that's classified, that's classified?
Help us understand, like, what's the significance of UFOs? Like,
They're not coming from, well, I should say it this way. The significance of UFOs is multiple parts, but number one, it's not what you think it is. It's not coming from other planets. The evidence doesn't suggest that.
Interdimensional.
Yes. And the reason is because time is parallel. It's not linear, or it's not like we start here and go forward in time. Time is side by side, which means everything in the past and the future is existing in this moment, but within different frequencies. So a civilization that's at the end of their technological cycle could build a submarine that changes its voltage and materializes in that same location, just into our timeline. And then fucking, it's crazy.
That was well articulated. I like that.
Have you ever had any like glitches in the Matrix where like
yes,
time sped up for you, or like I've had that a couple times.
Weird things. So like this, yeah. But when I got more into this, so there's a consciousness aspect to this. Like, you have to think of like consciousness is like, it's like the mind of God, you know. It's not a dude in a toga with a crown of thorns making Jupiter, you know. It's like everything you see is one band of frequencies. The highest frequency is light, unified mind. The lowest frequency would be blackness, absence of love, absence of whatever. And physical matter is somewhere right in the middle, right? So you have the ability to tune up higher or tune down lower, and behavior and all these things and time, and it all fucking comes together. But what it means also is that your brain is what's called a transducer. You're an antenna. Consciousness.
That's what I was saying to
Duncan Trussell.
Yeah, Duncan Trussell.
So you create matter. And when you think something, it creates it. And you're not reactionary to your environment. You're actually proactive, and you just don't know it. So it really matters what you choose to see and feel, because that's literally what's being created for you. And people don't know this shit. So when you're like really into some crazy shit, the universe will start creating things, and we just think it's paranormal.
Yeah.
Like, for example, at UCLA, they were studying poltergeist events, and they found out that you can see a book move on the shelf and it scares you. But if you see a book move on the shelf and it scares the shit out of you, that book will then fly off the shelf and try and hit you. So the more scared you get, the more shit starts happening. And they didn't know why. Well, the reason is you're a transducer of your environment. You're an antenna plugging into all these frequencies. And once you go, oh, that book is moving, it'll move. You know, so it's fucking crazy. It's like our universe, it's just not what we think it is. And the whole thing with UFOs is that they're fucking around with us because of that. You know,
is it not like we're not?
What do you mean they're messing around with us? What does that mean? You just said all that and how they, because I had a theory back, like I this would just be, I don't know. I had a theory that they used to travel through black holes because they don't. I don't know. That's a whole different tangent. Man, that's a lot to unpack. So it's like, have you, and you, what you just said, have you verified with other people in the industry that that's how it works, or is that what theoretically makes sense?
I think of UFO as like a vehicle,
right,
which aliens are going to travel in.
Yeah.
So should we not be using the term aliens?
Yeah, alien is.
Oh yeah, and what are they? Are they just messing with us? What do you mean they're just messing with us? Because I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and even when we visited Area 51, that UFO is just an unidentified flying object. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is an alien, but I have definitely seen some things in the sky that move way quicker than airplanes and just make very interesting maneuvers. And if you ever go out to Area 51, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you will see some stuff that, I mean, it's just stuff you can't explain.
Hard only because it's like that makes us think it's coming from Mars or some shit or a different planet. These are more like entities. These are more like a lot of them are there's like clones that are like just fucking like, you think we made Dolly the sheep and we think that we're like, you think that's all we've done in the 60s, we cloned a sheep. We might be a little bit more advanced than that. So what is something else that's super advanced doing AI and creating things that can fly around and tamper? Well, are they little program bots? Well, where's like the mainframe? Well, maybe the ship is alive in a mainframe, biological organism, but it's metal and whatever, but there's an intelligence to it. It's so advanced.
Okay.
So the theory that they started showing up at the time we did nuclear weapons, they're not here to protect us, they're, because that would be like, it's not interdimensional, that'd be from like outer space.
No, not interdimensional, because the one thing we found out is that the EMP wave from a nuclear blast kind of travels through multiple dimensions. So it's like that energy is fucking up whatever's in that location, and maybe those people are like, what the fuck was that? Let's materialize into that other timeline and get those motherfuckers to stop. But the reality is too, is UFOs been around forever. Like, you're talking biblical, you're talking religions, you're talking the pyramids, you're talking the Star of Bethlehem is not a star. The sun is big. The Star of Bethlehem is like a little ball of light that 3 dudes on horses followed for days, and it hovered over a manger. So think about that. What is that? Ezekiel's wheels, Fatima in Portugal. All these religious events are always the same thing. And you got to then go, well, what are they doing? What is happening from that? Well, we start cults. We go crazy. We create different religions. We have different belief systems. We get really scared because they prophesize the end of the world. They tell you that if you do something wrong, you're going to go burn in hell for eternity. But if you listen to what that voice is in your head, that's God. So do that. And then someone hears a burning bush and they go and start a religion. It's like holograms and technologies and making people not be together,
So I would ask, why are they here? What do they want from us? Do they want resources, or what's your theory on what they want? Oh, and technology. I always wondered if like I also had a theory on that's how we would get our technology. I know this sounds absolutely insane, but hear me out. Where's all of our new technology coming from? Everything's newer, faster, smaller. Like, it does all these things, and it's like we're not discovering new resources anywhere. We've had the same resources for centuries, and all of a sudden things are just, once again, being going from bigger to smaller to faster to stronger. It's like, are we getting technology from them? And do you think that we have some intergalactic treaty or trade, or I don't know, very like Men in Black-esque. And do you believe in the Men in Black? And do you believe that people like something like that you would hide in plain sight? So many questions and so many things to unpack with what he's saying.
Making us think that there's a dude like Allah or Jesus that created the universe versus source intelligence. There's just like your bandwidth, your fiber optic cable just to like consciousness, which is like the one power that powers the atom that permeates everything. And we're all from it. But as long as we think it's a dude and that group over there thinks it's a different dude, we're going to hate each other. And we don't really evolve and we don't really grow spiritually, you know?
I'm sure you've heard the story. I went down the rabbit hole with
real quick, and it's like, yeah, he's right. And people will argue over this. And it's so weird because whether you believe in God, like whatever your religion is, it's just weird how our culture is just that is like they'll go to war over something like that. Is like, why do you think that is? Like, who instilled that into human beings that it's like we can't have different opinions for religious reasons and we will kill each other over it. So I don't know, man. Yeah, like what I don't know. And then I'd ask, what do you believe? Do you believe in God, evolution? Do you believe in this higher power? Like where are you at?
They brought people to Alpha Centauri to live, like 13 people. And
the Serpo.
Is that true? I mean, what is that different than like what's going on now? Like, are stories like that true?
I don't buy those. I at all, but I do know some fucking crazy shit where like it makes you kind of wonder about the other stuff. So, for example, there's a document that leaked that described something coming from another planet, and then it hit like a meteor, and then it all came down, and then we retrieved these bodies in the craft and whatever. So I knew this document, and then I was in a meeting, I can't say with who and what it was all about, but I found out during that meeting that was misinformation, the part about the meteor and coming from another planet. And then they leaked the document, and the whole point was for us to keep thinking these are coming from planets and shit. Because it's a lot less scary, you know, to think, well, they're super far away, so it's hard for them to get here, right. You know. But the reality is like the misinformation placed in documents that are already leaked on purpose is to slowly inoculate us and to be okay with things over time. It's a lot easier to go, well, they're not coming from other planets, they're coming from here, but you already knew about them, so it's not as scary. It's not too much thrown on you at once. But the absurdity that comes along with this stuff is insane. Like in the sense of like, dude, I've been told so many fucking stories. There's like shit where things just show up and they look, you know, totally human, and then you turn around and it's not even there, but you're on a ship in the middle of the Atlantic and you're on an aircraft carrier, and it's like there's a human standing there telling you to get the fuck out of the area, and then you turn around and that fucking human's not even there, you know. So you're kind of going, well, did we go to another planet? Like those things. What I would say is there is potential that something like that happened, but I would say 70% of what's in there is probably untrue or something. I think that there are things on other planets, but I think that what's really going on is like space time. They call it space time, is because if you light a flashlight, that light travels for infinity. So if you were just like, when we see a star, they always tell you you're seeing like, we're seeing what happened like 30,000 years ago because that light just got here. So we're essentially seeing the beginning. We're seeing the same star, but we're seeing a different point in time than where it's at, but we're looking at it. And that's the idea that I think in space, the way things stretch out with light is the way everything exists all in one moment. So I don't know how much planet to planet fucking transportation is going on. I don't doubt it. But what I do know is the things that are materializing here are doing it with frequency and timelines and stuff. And
I did, when you said the materialize in a different, you know, time, like, and describing the parallel timelines, that was so digestible.
Oh, that's cool.
I was able to really like get that.
I like how Steve-O is complimenting him as far as like how he's being very articulate, because this subject is kind of a sensitive subject, as people, when they either don't believe or they believe, or it's like, oh yeah, it's just kind of hokey, and it's like, we're not there, there's no such thing as aliens. And I feel like the government or whoever has made a very good job of making it so where it's like a joke if you believe in this sort of thing. But everything he just said, you could tell. And I know, even I remember back in the day when you kind of knew he was into this stuff, and he even has a song called Aliens Exist, and like he was hinting at it. But then I remember that huge shift where he left the beta. It was like Tom DeLonge leaves Blink-182 to go chase UFOs. At the time, everybody was like, what the hell is this guy doing? He's crazy, da 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 da. But whether you believe in it or not, if you listen to this guy talk, obviously he is very well spoken. So you could tell he knows his stuff and he's definitely had conversations. So it would be, I just let me know if that's what you're into in the comments below. But man, this is, I'll be honest, I did not expect this out of this interview.
Question that was keeping me up last night. I read this book, was it the Pleiadians? Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like I wrote it.
I fucked a Pleiadian. It was gnarly. It's one of the gnarliest things I've ever done.
This book, I forget the lady who wrote it, but she was speaking to the Pleiadians, and there was this theory presented in this book, which I read, which was that junk DNA. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Okay, so scientists refer to some 90% of our genetic makeup, of our DNA, as junk DNA. They cannot understand what purpose it serves. We only use, they can only identify 10% of our DNA as actually having anything to do with us as organisms. And the theory in this book was that that entities at one point found humans to be dangerous, capable of too much disruption, and went in and unplugged our DNA, because the theory is that the purpose of the junk DNA, 90% of our DNA, was actually that was what made us interdimensional beings. And so by unplugging our DNA, we no longer operated in a
higher frequency or something.
In other dimensions. Yeah. And by relegating us to simply this 3D experience, then like without that DNA plugged in, like we now kind of feel we don't understand why we're here, like what's the meaning, like we're kind of just in the dark, like they rendered us impotent in some kind of level.
Yeah, I don't doubt a version like that at all. I mean, I'm not a geneticist obviously anymore. but yeah, I mean, I think like the way it looks like to me,
Barbara Marciniak, she was the author.
The way it looks like to me is that something came here and tampered with DNA and all the chimeras and all the weird shit you see on pyramid walls. It's like half man, half bull and all this weird shit. Even when you look at the ancient Sumerian text, it talks a lot about those who from heaven to earth came, and they created a slave species. And so there's
Nephilim.
The Nephilim was part, yes, the giants of the Bible, all that kind of stuff. Because the fallen angels took women for wives and give birth to giants. I mean, there's a whole series of stories and color that we can paint with that someone fucked with our DNA. And I tend to think like that there's something that's been cyclical on Earth where civilizations rise and fall in these Tower of Babel type moments where they will be as gods, strike them down, change their languages and all this weird shit. I really believe there's truth to all that as soon as we let off a nuclear weapon, boom, they show up again. Wow, we put all these kids in a zoo and now they're building bombs. We gotta figure this shit out. So I think what I've learned is that all the secrecy around UFOs was for good reason, because we didn't know what it was. Then we thought it was aliens, and we realized, holy shit, they're not aliens, they're something else. And then we're like, what do? We need to study this, understand this. We need to build a weaponry or something, on a way to push back. We got to do something, but it might take like 70 years. And then like 70 years later, I'm like sitting there like, hey, I got an idea. Let's talk about this. And some of the people were like, it's time to talk about it. Others were like, it's not time, but it's nature. So we got to kind of confront it regardless, but it's very real. It's insanely bigger than you think it is. It's not just a few things in the sky. It's very, very big. I got brought over to Italy. Some dudes with Italian intelligence and Vatican and UN, they were all there when the military base had these briefings, and they showed me a map of the Mediterranean. And what was happening is on the coast of Sicily, all these like apartments were like catching on fire. Like a microwave, boom, some books, boom, like the fucking couch, boom. And so the government came in and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? So they quarantined the area, get everyone to leave, and they're going, why are things catching on fire? They detected these energy beams, energy weapons or something that were coming off of like way out in the ocean in the Mediterranean. So this dude gets, he was a colonel at the time, and he was in charge. Oh, what they looked out and saw were UFOs were out in the ocean fucking around. So the head of the UFO program and the head of the Italian Navy SEALs get on an unmarked civilian helicopter and just fly out to go see what's going on out there. As they're flying, a UFO pops out of the ocean and shoots their fucking helicopter down. I have the documents on the Italian intelligence letterhead. I talked to the two dudes I was in the meeting with that were on the fucking helicopter. I have pictures of the helicopter being chased by the UFO and all the damage that was done to it with some type of microwave weapon or something. And what they found out was that there were airplanes and other helicopters kind of in the area, but the UFO knew that those dudes were looking for him. It's like they can read their minds. It's like we have drones that fly around and listen to people's like cell phones and shit. They do it with thought. Imagine in advance. Sure. Oh yeah, we don't need to listen to their phone. I'll just fucking point my dish at Steve-O and I can hear his, whoa, he's thinking of some weird shit. Right.
Shoot
him down. So it's just absolutely wild. So the map they showed me of the Mediterranean, they go, these are all the hot spots of what's happening with UFOs just recently. And there was hundreds of marks, hundreds all over the ocean. There are just things happening everywhere, every day. It's fucking crazy.
So, well, if that's true, this is insane. This is crazy, man. If that's true with all these hotspots, are people going to investigate? These things are popping up out of the water. I think they're called USOs. And I forget underwater. I don't know, something like that. But is the government investigating something like that? Are there, where these hotspots are they sending in submarines to like dive down to see if there are if there's any evidence, or are they coming, how they're coming up and out of the water? But that has been a theory too, especially I learned that while I was in California, that there are a lot of sightings in the waters on the Pacific coast. And have you ever seen anything or heard of anything else of the government trying to dive down and investigate and find out where the hell they came from?
Yeah, I heard the big base under Puerto Rico off the.
I think they're probably, I would
everywhere.
imagine, in all over the place in our oceans. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I want to ask you because it's so fascinating for me. Maybe you can help me find this documentary. I went down the rabbit hole on YouTube 10 years ago, and it was the man who spoke 100 language, and he worked. He visited the White House during the Eisenhower, and he was like well liked, and everybody liked him. And then I couldn't find this documentary anywhere, so I'm like, is this a figment of my imagination, or?
There's these stories, Valiant Thor and the stranger at the Pentagon. Yeah, where a dude shows up that's super smart, says he's from Venus, and he's hanging out in the Pentagon at these things, and he's giving us all this knowledge. Three things. One, it's either true or it's not. Two, he's lying, he's not from Venus or something. Or three, he's from here, or and he's lying from where he's from. But the idea of, I'll say it this way, I personally, in my own opinion, subscribe to face-to-face interactions and technology transfer and all that kind of stuff. I believe there's a possibility for that to have existed. I say this because I have pieces of wreckage from the 40s under a defense contract with the government right now. And you can look that up. If you look up Tom DeLonge, Army material, you'll see all the articles. It's the first time in history the US government's talking about doing, a defense contract on purported UFO material. And we've had that for a couple of years. It's being studied in like crazy ways. I can't talk much about it, but if I have that, I would imagine that some of the governments on the world have a lot more than I got, and we're not saying that this is real. We're saying it's highly, it's highly anomalous. It's the engineering on this one piece looks to be fucking crazy. And that is still looking to be the case here after having this contract for the past couple of years. They've been studying it. So if there's nothing to this, we would have lost that contract like 2 months into it, so we'll see where it goes and all that kind of stuff. But if I have a piece and it's looking to be pretty gnarly, then I'm assuming that other places have some way bigger pieces. So if that's the case.
When you say pieces, and I mean, what kind of pieces are you talking here? And the main question out of this is anti-gravity possible? Because I think he was, and why you see it in the news, but it's like it gets brushed under the rug. It's like buried in like the C block of a newscast. And why isn't this bigger than it is? Do publicists get involved in like these damage control places and sweep it under the rug? Because I've heard it too, and there's documentaries that come out. Joe Rogan interviewed Bob Lazar. His story on Netflix is crazy. Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind with Dr. Stephen Greer. Like these, and they've got a lot of evidence for this type of stuff, but it's like it doesn't have that like pow, that sting effect. Why is that? Is the government brushing it under the rug? But yeah, and I remember him talking about how his company had something that was anti-gravity. So does your company have anti-gravity technology? All right, that does it for this podcast interview breakdown. But before you go, if this is your first time on this channel, my goal is to help podcasters like yourself become the authority in their niche with podcast interviews. So if you have a podcast or you're thinking about starting one shortly, this free download is for you. It's a list of my top 25 podcast interview questions that I use to make me sound like a professional, and it gives me the ability to get those golden nugget sound bites so you can double your downloads and turn your listeners into leads. The link for this is in the description, and we'll see you next time.